Hey everyone, welcome back to Eric's Everyday Watches. As always, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. The watch we're looking at today is the Bulova Hack model 96A259. Now there are three different models for this watch. There's a white dial, a black dial with red Arabic numbers, and then this version. Now this is the special VWI edition, which stands for Veterans Watchmaking Initiative. Bulova teamed up with VWI. It's a nonprofit organization that helps vets and especially disabled vets. It gives them a job, teaches them a trade, teaches them to be watchmakers, and restores some dignity. Unemployment rate for disabled veterans is 84%. 84%. Now, Bulova donates 10% of the proceeds from the version of this watch to VWI. And I want to point out that this version of the watch actually costs the same amount as the other versions. You're not being asked to pay anything more. Bulova actually donates that 10% out of their pocket. Now this watch is currently selling on the Bulova website for $320. You can also find it on the gray market someplace like Amazon for around $250. The case and bezel are made out of 316 stainless steel. Now the first thing that jumped out at me is the finishing on this watch. There's a brushed finish to it, which is standard for a military style watch, but it's done with two different directions. You'll see the side of the case is brushed in this very distinct vertical direction, which makes it really stand out from the other part of the case. I love the way that light hits it. It adds a little bit of contrast. Even though it's all stainless steel, simply by changing the direction of the brushing. The center of the case back has this glass inlay, which is the VWI logo. Now, I usually try to stay very impartial when reviewing watches, but I need to admit that I am a fan of Bulova. I love the whole Joseph Bulova immigrating to the US and starting a business story. I love the history of the space exploration and being used by the military. And now they're supporting veterans. It just makes me love them that much more. Now, as far as fits and finish, the edges and corners on top of the case, they're fairly smooth. Now, it is a very angular case. And these are not chamfered corners, and they are not completely rounded off. The bottom of the case is not quite as smooth, but it's still acceptable. This watch is meant to be very utilitarian, so I think this works. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the edges are sharp. I'm just saying that the finish lines up with what you'd expect from a military-style watch. This is not the type of finish on these edges that you would expect from a dress watch. Now, inside the case, we have Citizen's Mayota 8S20 movement. And that movement is a 21 jewel movement. It does hack, of course, the name of the watch, and it does hand wind. It also has a 42-hour power reserve with a unidirectional router. Now there's no date or day feature with this movement. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour, meaning the sweeping second hand moves 6 times for every second. And it does have an accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds per day. The crown at the 3 o'clock position is 7 millimeters in width and 4 millimeters in depth, and it does seem slightly large for this size of case, but again, this is a military style watch, so it's all about functionality. Being able to quickly and easily adjust the time. It is a simple push-pull crown. Turning it when it's in its all the way in position winds the movement, and pulling it out to the first position is how you set the time. So let's talk about the dial. We have Arabic numbers 1 through 12 running on the outside in this off-white color. There's a slight green tint to them. And then those numbers are loomed. Inside that, we have smaller military time numbers, which are in a pure white color. And those are not loomed. Up above, we have Bulova printed directly on the dial. And down below, it says automatic. Now, I'm not usually a fan of printing directly on the dial. I'd rather have applied indices or some kind of depth to the dial. But I think it works here. Again, because this is a utilitarian military style watch, I find it highly legible. You know, the slight difference in color between military time and civilian time is just enough contrast, and all of that just seems to pop off the matte black dial. It doesn't say it on the dial, but this watch is rated for 30 meters of water resistance. And that's not a lot, but again, military style watch, not actual military. Now, one thing that did take me completely by surprise is the actual size of the dial. Recently, I reviewed a Pagani watch which was a lot bigger in size, but the dial is really small in proportion to everything else. Here, this Bulova hack is only 38 millimeters in diameter, but the dial is still 32 millimeters. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is so legible and doesn't feel like a small watch. Now here's an image of it with a US quarter for reference. And you can see how there is still a good amount of dial visible. Now topping off that dial, we have a double-domed mineral crystal, which has a really nice distortion around the edges of it. The canvas strap that comes with this watch is 18 millimeters in width and has a strip of leather applied at the adjustment holes. The sign buckle and metal keepers are brushed steel. Now, if I had one negative thing to say about the strap, it'd be that in everyday use, I did end up wearing it on the smallest adjustment hole possible. And that is for my 7-inch wrist. You know, given the fact that this is a 38 millimeter size watch, it is fair to say that a lot of people with smaller wrists are going to be looking at this watch. And if you have less than a 7-inch wrist, you may need to supply your own strap. So let's go over the specs of this watch. We have a double dome mineral crystal, the Miyota 8S20 movement, a diameter of 38 millimeters, a thickness of 13.5 millimeters, a lug width of 18 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug distance of 47 millimeters. Let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons. For pros, I got double-domed crystal. It is highly legible. It supports the veterans, who's not going to love that. And the movement does have hand winding. Now for cons, you know the strap needs more adjustment holes. And there is only 30 meters of water resistance. So my personal take on this watch is, I've always said that my personal sweet spot was between a 40 and a 42 millimeter watch. But I actually enjoy this watch a lot more than I was expecting to. And I think this watch has kind of won me over for the small watch approach. This has been Eric from Eric's Everyday Watches, reminding you to buy the watch that you love. And don't pay any attention to what anybody else says or thinks. This is your watch collection. If you like this video, if you find it helpful in any way, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.